From what it is, to what SpaceX part in it is, to what it could mean for the future of space travel, and more, join me as we explore why SpaceX is making Starlink. SpaceX, created by Elon Musk, is aiming to do a lot of things in the world and beyond right now, including their efforts to put humanity on Mars. But in the early parts of 2019, they started launching rockets into space for another reason. Mainly, they launched satellites to start up their Starlink program. What is Starlink? Well, believe it or not, it's a program that is meant to be used to help bring the internet to people all over the world, including bringing very high-quality internet to people in the most isolated parts of the world. Furthermore, to nations like the US, the intent is to boost the internet's power so that there will be no latency issues. All you'll have to do when the internet is up is get a special antenna that SpaceX is developing. Fast forward to March of 2020, and Elon Musk has now gotten 360 of these satellites into space. That number is significant because once it reaches 400 satellites, he'll be able to do a test with some minor coverage over North America. Once he gets 800 satellites, he'll be able to push that to moderate coverage over the continent. Plus, with each successful launch, he's continuing to test his Falcon rockets and their payload capabilities, which will help him during the Mars missions in the future. If you're curious to how many satellites he has planned for the Starlink project to get true worldwide coverage, that would be 12,000, which of course he plans to distribute over the next decade or so. It'll take a while, but should it work, it could be a huge deal. Now you might be thinking, wouldn't this kind of satellite launching and network connectivity and computing power cost all sorts of money? Yes, it would. It's going to cost Musk and SpaceX billions of dollars to get this to work. And obviously, there is no guarantee that it'll work the way that Musk hopes. So to that end, why is Musk going through all the trouble of trying to get Starlink up and running? Let's start back at the beginning for this, okay? This all started in 2015, when Musk took the stage and announced that they were working on a satellite communications network. Why? Because he believed that there was a significant unmet demand for low-cost global broadband capabilities. To further help with this goal, Musk and his team opened up a new base of operations in Redmond, Washington, in order to help them get the satellites built, which you would think would be a sign that they had a good plan and that they were going to implement it as soon as possible, right? Well, yes and no. The original plan for Starlink was that they were going to build 2 prototype satellites, launch them into space, and then test how the reception and broadband signal was. There was just one big problem. While building the satellites were easy enough, making a receiver that people could use to both connect with the satellites and having it be a low-cost one wasn't so easy. Because of this, instead of launching the satellites in 2016 as intended, they didn't launch until 2018, specifically February 2018, when the 2 satellites called Tintin-A and B were indeed launched into space, and they were successfully communicating with Earth stations down below. This test allowed SpaceX to both ensure that their plan would work, while also refining certain elements to help make sure that everything would be okay for those who aren't tech-savvy. After all, if you make something complicated to use, no one will want to use it, am I right? Anyway, with this success, you'd expect a big celebratory thing to happen, right? Except it didn't, not then at least. SpaceX was unusually quiet about everything going on with Starlink until November 2018, when the FCC approved their launching of the full 12,000 satellite grid. A huge win for SpaceX and Elon Musk, because without that approval, they wouldn't have gotten their worldwide grid goal. Once that approval was made, the preparations for the launch of the satellites began. Then in May 2019, the first 60 satellites were launched, and they were done in such a way that you could actually see them in space, going into their various positions if you were in the right spot to look. These satellites are doing more than you think though. They're not just there to be in the sky to help out with internet connection. No, they do more than that. They also have ion thrusters that will allow them to navigate the rather heavy laden atmosphere of our planet which is loaded with space junk, as well as take themselves out of orbit when the time comes for their replacements to arrive. SpaceX has even gone out of their way to make sure that the space debris potentially caused by the 12,000 satellite grid is minimal, which is good because it's literally a minefield up in our atmosphere, so much so that people literally had to make a predictive algorithm for the space junk so that satellites, spacecraft, and more can avoid it all and not risk damaging themselves. If you're curious, they showed the FCC that as long as nothing bad happens, they'll be able to burn up 95% of the satellite as it re-enters the atmosphere. Before we dive more into Starlink, be sure to like or dislike the video. That way we have a feedback to improve our work, and subscribe to the channel. That way you don't miss any of our weekly videos. Okay, so we know the satellites are meant to help bring good broadband internet to the world, especially to those who don't have it right now. And we know how they're getting into space and how they'll survive up there. But how exactly do the satellites work in terms of their communications functions? Well, in truth, SpaceX has tried to keep very tight-lipped on that, mainly because they don't want other people to steal their work. A very understandable reason on the whole. However, thanks to a certain FCC filing that they were forced to make to get approval, we do know certain details, such as how they have chips on the satellites that indicate that there will be at least 5 laser systems on them. But aren't lasers offensive weapons? Yes, if in the right amount of power levels, but lasers are also used to transmit information. And the lasers here will beam pulses of light from one to the other to convey information, and thus help provide fast internet speeds. How does that work? Oh, do you know about the speed of light? Like the actual speed of light? Good. Now on Earth, the speed of light works and doesn't work depending on what's going on. Obviously, in regards to certain beams of light, it travels at actual light speed. However, when it comes to certain objects and materials, it actually is hampered. For example, light going through glass does not travel at light speed, but rather 40% slower, which won't be a problem with the satellite grid because the lasers will be going directly to one another, and they'll be doing it in the vacuum of space. Thus, the Starlink grid will allow for much more lower latency across longer distances, and thus better internet for many. This is what many people think will be the moneymaker for Starlink, because having the best internet and as little latency as possible is a must-have thing for many people, especially those who rely on the internet for their working environment. Now, this isn't to say that there will be no latency issues, as the Starlink program is going to have to deal with its own problems and issues, but it will be a lot less complicated and latent than what we're using now with fiber optic cables that give us our internet reach currently. The biggest issue is going to be the connection of the satellite grid. As noted, there are going to be 12,000 of these across the sky. Do you know why that is? It's not just to ensure that the entire world more or less is covered, but because when it comes to these devices, their range in terms of scanning the Earth for internet signals is small in the context of Earth. So thus, all 12,000 of them are covering a section of Earth as they're in orbit around the planet. So if you wanted to send a signal from London to New York, the satellites will have to bounce a laser signal off each other in order to reach the right ones to get the information, and then bounce off of even more satellites to get the signal back to sender. Now, talking this all out may seem like an overly complicated and more elaborate process, but when you're dealing with lasers moving the speed of light, then this gets more simple. The only real complication is going to be aiming, as you're aiming a laser at a satellite moving certain speed and having to hit a certain part of the satellite to get the confirmation going and all that. I'm sure Elon Musk has worked it out though, or will have it worked out by the time the entire grid has gone up. That's why the upcoming test of the North American grid is going to be so important. There are no doubt going to be glitches. That's just how things work. So the SpaceX team will use that to go and make things better, so that when it's time to go global, they know what to expect. But what really is the point of lower latency? Will we really see the difference? Well, that depends on your internet provider right now, and that's just the honest truth. Sure, for the average Joe and Josephine, you won't notice much, and that's okay. But think of people who have to deal with the stock market or other things where up to the minute and even up to the second updates are critical to make the best decisions and make key financial moves. So for groups like these, the Starlink system could be a godsend for them in terms of making even more money for themselves. Unless you think that Elon is only doing this to make money via these groups. You should know that these groups have gone out of their way to get such services before, even making their own private fiber optic cable to connect the US to the UK. What's more, Starlink will be even faster in transmissions that cover greater distances, such as if you wanted to send a message from the UK to China. But if we're being honest here, Elon Musk doesn't care about the money, or at least it's not his primary goal. His goal, honestly, is altruism. He wants the world to be connected through the internet. You'd think that by 2020 we would have a much better grasp on getting technology around the world, but that's not true. About half the world's population is offline, and that's a staggering number. Starlink is truly made to help get that number down, even if it'll take some time and effort to do so. For example, one of the ways that third world countries will be able to get to the internet is via a Starlink terminal. The cost? $200. That's a lot of money even in the United States, but in places like South America or Africa, it's a fortune. And you might think that this is proof that this Starlink plan won't work. The catch, though, is that this terminal is still cheaper than others like it on the market right now, and with the help of certain charity groups, this could be bought and transported to certain areas to help them get more connections with the world. It'll be a process, but it could indeed work. Then there's the profit, which I know we said Elon doesn't need the money, but that doesn't mean SpaceX doesn't. If the plan goes through and everything works like it should, Elon's Starlink program could bring in about $30 to $50 billion a year just from the stock market people buying into the system as well as others. This is well over 10 times what SpaceX is making a year right now. Why exactly does that matter? Simple. SpaceX is trying to be more than your next internet provider. They're trying to take us into space. But to do that, they need money. Elon and other investors got the ball rolling, and their efforts speak for themselves. But if they were able to get fully self-funded via Starlink, they can put more money and time and efforts into getting us into space. All this money could be put into the Mars colonization program, which is Elon's dream right now in many ways. And with the extra money, they can do more tests and experiments on how to go and make things better for humanity by making faster ships, better colony vessels, and more. So in a way, by trying to make Starlink work right now, and in the next few years, Elon is helping ensure the future of SpaceX and the innovations that they're trying to make. And that's a pretty cool thing. Thanks for watching, everyone. What did you think of this look into Starlink and SpaceX's goal for it? Are you surprised that this satellite grid is meant to bring internet to the world at large? Do you think once fully functional, it'll do exactly that? Let me know in the comments below. Be sure to like or dislike the video, and I'll see you next time.